Boxes were never the goal. Let me start here. We were never meant to fit neatly inside of boxes. Boxes were made for storage, not for souls with purpose, not for visionaries full of dreams with the fortitude to move those dreams forward, and definitely not for the humans who see how their efforts can make this world a better place. Boxes serve a function. They keep things organized, but they also keep things contained. And yet so many of us are walking around trying to fit into shapes that were never cut for us. We shrink our tone, we adjust our walk, we edit our truth just to be palatable. But what if God never asked you to fit in? What if he called you to stand out, not for attention, but for alignment? I'm Misti Green, and this is the I Lead Misty Blue podcast, where strategy meets soul and faith finds its voice. We're going to be talking about the messy middle, who you've been and who you're becoming. I want to talk about something the world is desperate for: more humans who possess the audacity to break the box. Here's the truth. The world will always work to dim your light. It will pressure you to fold. It will push you to second guess your gifts. It will tell you to sit down when God clearly has called you to stand. The call on your life cannot be flattened by conformity. You must have the audacity to love yourself deeply, believe in yourself wholly, advocate for what matters most, and step out in faith when the safer option is to blend in, because blending in might buy you approval, but standing out builds your assignment. Authenticity isn't always loud. It's anchored. It means showing up even when you're misunderstood, even when you're judged, even when you're ostracized. For me, that's been a lifelong journey. As a runaway teenager who didn't follow the script, as a teen mom who refused to let statistics define her, and as a leader in rooms where I was expected to have a voice, but not to use it, I spoke up anyway. I learned that authenticity isn't about volume. It's about credibility, and it's about alignment. It's not about being seen. It's about being consistent, about being steady. When you're anchored to your why, anchored to the belief that your value was established long before anyone approved of you, you can weather every single misunderstanding that comes your way. It might not be easy, but you have the fortitude to weather the misunderstanding. Many of us screw up with that same well-worn instruction group. Get good grades, say yes ma'am or no sir, and stay inside the lines. It sounds like wisdom and it sounds like success, but when those words become our definition of success, we've missed the mark and we've raised children to comply, not to create. See, I'm Texas raised. I've got friends who have always required the yes ma'am and the no sir. In my house, I never did. A simple yes or a pardon would work. We never used the sharp word what, but we chose to do things differently, anchored in respect. Right or wrong, I couldn't mandate a phrase that sometimes carries an air of subservience. Respect is essential, but respect is reciprocal, and it is shown, not forced. And I require the same thing as an educator. When a student answers me with a casual yeah, I simply respond yes. They'll usually say yeah again, and I'll repeat just as calm yes with a slight head nod. Something happens there. If that student is standing with friends who know my rhythm, you can see the nudge from the side. Say yes, bro. By the second yes, for me, the strategy and energy has shifted. The student will smile, I'll smile back, and the conversation keeps flowing organically. With a known, this conversation requires a yes. It's subtle, but it's powerful. A quiet way to set expectations through what? Through mutual respect. That's what breaking the box looks like in real time. It's not demanding power, but modeling it differently. Good grades and degrees aren't the enemy. They show discipline. They show the ability to finish what you've started, but a report card does not measure brilliance. I'm an educator of 28 years, and I'll say it again. A report card does not measure brilliance, and a diploma does not define worth. Our schools reinforce the same pattern. We reward compliance more than we reward creativity. Schedules, rules, we train kids to color within lines drawn by adults who are simply afraid of the mess. We take up cell phones. Students are now told to lock them away for 8 hours, while adults are still scrolling their phones in every meeting and while walking in the hallway. As a campus administrator, I can't pretend that that's fair. The lesson shouldn't be phones are bad, put them away. It should be, here's how to use your phone responsibly. See, respect is modeled. Respect is reciprocity. If we expect students to put their phones away all day, guess what? The adults should model that focus too. The truth, it's never really been about phones. It's about engagement. Think of yourself at a dinner with a significant other or with an old friend. You're so engaged in the moment, the ding and the vibration from your phone, it doesn't even knock you off kilter of what's happening in real time with the person you're sitting with. That's about engagement. If we make learning so alive that students forget to reach for their phone, we have modeled now what it is, number one, to have respectful use of cell phones, but number two, we're prioritizing engagement. Teaching manners and self-control, like not yelling across the cafeteria, that's essential. But it isn't the same as demanding blind obedience and compliance through silence. Who wants to sit through a 30-minute lunch without speaking to the people to their left or the right or across from them? Character building is saying, here's how you sit in environments with multiple people and how you communicate and conduct yourself. Character and discipline are what innovators need, but we have to model that through the expectations of what we're promoting on school campuses. There was a time when my own fear spoke. I learned a lesson the hard way. See, my oldest son, he has tattoos. He has a lot of them. I celebrated each and every one until the one on his hand. Suddenly, my old fear surfaced. In my mind, I thought, and I also spoke it out loud, he just closed doors for himself. I've sat in enough hiring meetings to know bias is real. People make snap judgments just based on how you look, what you wear, and how you show up physically. But my kids pushed back. Both of my older kids said, "That's not right, Mom." They were right. That fear wasn't truth. It was me projecting an old system onto a new generation. The reality, my son is brilliant enough to trade stocks or build with his hands. Whatever path he chooses, at some point, he'll break through every single ceiling, hand tattoo and all. Sometimes we are the ones who need to break the box first for the next generation. We need to step aside of our own fears and biases and understand that things are changing, and that's okay. To every 20-something listening, hear me. Don't inherit the quiet frustrations of a parent who worked 30 years beneath their potential. Maybe they lacked network. Maybe they lacked opportunity. Maybe they didn't fit the quote-unquote look for the next level, but they still showed up and they still provided for you. Have respect for that. Take their discipline and their work ethic, then flip the narrative. Build something that lets you say, "Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, hey, Granny, because of what you modeled, I created a dream for us all, and we will all benefit," because success is not just about your own gain. It's about honoring those who endured rooms that didn't see their worth, and they did that for you. The Bible also gives us a powerful model in Daniel, a young man exiled to Babylon, immersed in a foreign culture. He learned their language, their literature, and even their system, but he refused to bow to their idols. Daniel thought beyond the box without losing his own character. He paired courage with discipline. He earned respect without surrendering his faith. That's the tension we live in today. How to excel in Babylon without becoming Babylon. How to excel in systems without becoming the system. And it's not just Bible history. It's now. Superintendent Mike Miles in Houston ISD walked into a district with 121 failing schools, and he had the audacity to declare, geography will no longer dictate destiny. He's criticized daily, but he hasn't folded. he runs with the bulls. Alberto Cavallo in Los Angeles refuses to stop advocating for equity. He faces opposition, he faces politics and sheer exhaustion, yet he stays mission focused to his why. I've seen educators finish degrees at 40, entrepreneurs launch businesses at 60, and parents stand before school boards demanding better for their kids. Each dared to be the nail that stuck out. Each dared to run with the bulls when it would have been easier to sit quietly within the comfort of the box. If you want another picture, let's talk about Rosa Parks. She wasn't the first to resist, but she had the audacity to say, you know what, I'm tired, no more. Her single act of refusal did what? It set off a movement that shifted history. Or think of John Lewis. He was beaten, but he didn't bow. He called it what? He called it good trouble. I'm here to say there is such a thing. That's what audacity looks like in motion. Courage that costs something, faith that refuses to fold, and conviction that outlasts discomfort and outlasts pain. Boxes aren't broken by your comfort. They're broken by your conviction. Now, let's be real. There are places where you can't show up in your full, unfiltered authenticity. In professional settings, sometimes it's not the place to bear every single truth. You can still be your courageous self, the one who advocates for what's right, who stands against policies that divide or demean, but you might have to say that full, fiery version of yourself for Christmas dinner or happy hour with your closest friends. That's called code shifting. Look at me. I can record a raw, faith-filled podcast one day and call out educators who promote bullying the next. That's not hypocrisy. It's adaptability. You've got to know when the code switch is necessary, not to break who you are, but to protect who you are. You're not being fake. You're being strategic. Until your circumstances allow you to exit fully in spaces that embrace your whole self, move wisely. Authenticity is knowing who you are. Wisdom is knowing when and where to reveal it. Sometimes breaking the box looks like asking the hard questions. My youngest son once dropped his backpack after school and asked me, "Mom, why does God love the people in the Bible more than he loves us?" I had to pause. He wasn't being rebellious. He was being real. He had questions after a hard day. And I told him, "Son, I believe God loves us the same. Maybe we've just gotten too noisy in our current world that it's hard to hear him clearly." Sometimes the audacity is admitting we don't know everything, yet holding on to faith anyway. Inquiry itself can be holy. Asking questions doesn't weaken your faith, it strengthens it. It makes you think. Years ago, I wrote about having the audacity to love yourself. That same audacity is what I pray for my children. The audacity to try something hard, to fail and still rise. Life will flatten you if you let it, but every setback can be a setup if you keep standing and have the willingness to break the box. I tell my daughter, and I mean this for all three of my children, I pray that my ceiling becomes your floor. Stand on the highest place I've ever reached and go higher. Be better than me. Be braver than me. Be bolder than me. Be the nail that sticks out. So here's my challenge. Be the one who says, "Why not?" when the world shrugs and says, "Because it's always been done that way." Your authenticity matters. Your questions matter. Your courage matters. Don't fold. Don't blend in. Don't silence yourself for someone else's comfort. Because when you know your value, when you are anchored to your why, and when you trust God's calling, you'll have the audacity to rise when the world expects you to settle within the box. This is what the Misti Blue podcast is all about. Stories that braid strategy and soul, and conversations that remind you that courage doesn't come from fitting in. It comes from standing firm. If this episode spoke to you, go back and listen to some of the earlier episodes in this Audacity collection, because together they form a blueprint for boldness. You can start with keep being that ball, the episode that will motivate you to remain in motion and in alignment, even when others would prefer you to slow down. You can then go to have the audacity to be misunderstood. That one's for every leader and every difference maker who's ever had their confidence misinterpreted. Then check out authenticity. Has no comparison. It's your reminder to strip away the filters and stand in the fullness of who you are. Follow that with one of my favorites, the nail that sticks out. It's about refusing to flatten your edges in a world that rewards sameness. And finally, running with the bulls. That one will reignite your courage to move through chaos with clarity, to lead, not for applause, but for impact. Each one of these episodes carries the same heartbeat. Be bold, be anchored, be audacious. Because the world doesn't change when we play it safe. It changes when ordinary people decide they won't be boxed in by fear, by systems, or by expectation. Share this episode with someone who's trying to find their voice again. Remind them confidence isn't arrogance and calling isn't conformity. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. And let's keep building lives, building schools, and communities where strategy and soul work hand in hand. Because the world does.